non-quarantine version of the same show. I'm your host. My job is to keep the conversation flowing and the drinks flowing as well. My co-host from Bitcoin Magazine, Joe Rogers, on my screen, he's at the bottom, but I don't know where he is on the feed. We have an awesome crew of guests here. So thank you to everyone from around the world who is joining us. We're going to start off with some introductions. So why don't we start off? I'm going to pass it over to Joe. Why don't you introduce yourself? And then after that, we'll go over to David.
Okay, CK, I think you should just lead the intros because popcorn is so difficult these days. But anyway, I'm Joe Rogers with Bitcoin Magazine. Happy to be here and chop up some shop with you guys. I've got a ice cold Bush Light in my hand, and I've got a couple sitting on my desk and koozies to keep them cold. So, CK, back to you.
All right, let's jump over to David. Good morning, sir.
That'd be this, David.
What do you do in Bitcoin? Welcome to the show.
Yeah, hi, it's David Watson. I'm from a company called Future.travel. We're an online travel agency, global, and we actually have our offices in Ho Chi Minh City, but we do sell tickets and other things around the world. And we've been taking Bitcoin. I was just trying to figure it out. It's been 8 years. We actually started before everything kind of came live online, and we've been doing live online for about 7 years with Bitcoin first. We have some of the other coins that we accept as well, and we're seeing a complete revolution with Lightning coming in and supporting Bitcoin.
Awesome. Well, glad to have you here. Let's jump over to Leo. Good morning to you as well. Welcome to the show.
Hey, CK. I'm Leo. I'm based in Hong Kong. We call ourselves the Bitcoin Association of Hong Kong. We do events. We put tram on the tracks. We just did a Lightning demo day last week. Tried to, get quite a few people excited about Lightning and have them make their first payments and receive their first payments. And it's very exciting how much has been changing and how, actually useful things have gotten and how smooth the UX has become.
That's exciting to hear. I need to take another deep dive onto Lightning, and I think a lot of the viewers probably saw some of the advertisement that you led in Hong Kong, getting those big Bitcoin like wraparounds on the trams. So
I actually have one here. So
there we go.
I never want to go a day without seeing a Bitcoin tram in my life. So I had these little models made, and now I have a Bitcoin tram going forth and back in my room. They're still on track, the real ones. It's quite awesome. We originally had it for 4 weeks, but they're now entering their 7th week, and I still get excited every time I see them. There's 3 going up and down. It's quite a long track, right? So if you just stand by the track, you might have to wait an hour before you see one.
Nice. Well, I love seeing just Bitcoin guerrilla marketing everywhere. Let's jump over to Will. I feel like you're no stranger to Bitcoin guerrilla marketing. Why don't you introduce yourself and welcome back to Bitcoin Magazine?
Yeah, I mean, it hasn't been too long since I was last here with you guys, so that's good. I run Fold app, and I'm excited about this group. I love how international it is, and I think we have plenty to talk about today between price action and some other stuff popping up. So good to be here.
Cool. Let's jump over to Brad. How's it going, Brad? Welcome to the show.
Thanks, CK. Thanks for having me.
Who are you? What do you do for those who don't know you?
So I run the US marketing team for eToro. We are a crypto exchange in the US. Globally, we're more widely known as being a consumer brokerage, stock trading app, commission-free trading, and our thing is sort of social trading. So every trader has a profile. You can see everyone else's portfolios unless they obviously opt out of that. And the best part is that if you see another trader that you like, that's a part of our popular investor program, you can set your account to copy all the trades that they do in real time of when they make their trades. So really fun.
Awesome, man. Well, excited to chop it up with Bitcoin. Albert, let's jump to you. Welcome to Bitcoin Magazine Happy Hour, and good morning. I hope you have an Irish coffee or something like that in hand, but I won't blame you if you don't.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, CK. Thanks for letting me join. So I'm the founder of Neutron Pay. We're a company out of Canada, so we do Lightning payments and stablecoin payments. And so we're kind of just hoping to push the envelope with getting the circular economy going. So we have our main headquarters out of Canada, like I said, and then we're kind of branching out into Vietnam to kind of move the needle out here, just because of the adoption and the market rate that we've seen here is quite aggressive. So yeah, just hoping to make sure that it's more aware and more brought to attention here.
Cool. And last but not least, let's go over to Zach. Zach, super excited to dive into your new Bitcoin product and how you're going to be contributing to the Bitcoin economy. But why don't you introduce yourself?
I'm Zach. I'm the CEO and co-founder at a relatively new company called Foundation Devices. We are a open hardware company, and our first product is a new Bitcoin hardware wallet called Passport that we're planning to ship in January. So it's a whirlwind of a winter over here in Boston, but really excited to talk more about what we're building and just excited to be here.
Cool, guys. Well, one of the impotents for bringing this crew together was Bitcoin Black Friday and BitcoinBlackFriday.com, which is it's an initiative by Bitcoin Magazine to celebrate the Bitcoin circular economy and to kind of bring together a list of everyone who accepts Bitcoin and try to put it all in one place and encourage them to earn Bitcoin by giving out discounts. There's also a ton of other great promotions on there, including Will's company Fold. They're giving away an entire Bitcoin on there. Zach's company and Brad's company are both taking out, kind of key promotional areas there and obviously participating in the Bitcoin economy. So again, make sure to check out BitcoinBlackFriday.com. Check out the One Bitcoin giveaway. Check out all the great promotions on there. And without further ado, let's just jump straight into the show. It's hard to have a Bitcoin stream today and not talk about price action. I think I went to dinner. It was $16,100, and now it's $16,400. So that's pretty exciting to me. Who has a hot take on price action? Obviously, the news right now is PayPal launched Bitcoin on there. But I guess who's jumping in their seats to talk about price?
Number go up.
I'm looking at you, Brad. Why do you jump in here? How you feeling about 16.4?
Well, feeling really good. I'd say in general, the last, I guess, 2 weeks or so have felt in a lot of ways like 2017, Q4 2017, but without the, the mass hysteria behind it, which is actually a really great sign. If we're able to recapture even 20K like it had before without the crazy headlines and the consumer attention, then what happens when that reemerges? So, a lot of these things are guesses, but you could imagine that this push is being helped by the institutions, which for years people have been saying institutions are coming. And now it's kind of true. They actually are. Every major institution you can name for the most part right now has at least some sort of involvement in blockchain in general. So I think that that's really what's behind this. And then who knows what's going to come in the coming months, but could be pretty exciting.
Question.
What?
Brad, can you share any information on your user base? Are you seeing uptick in new accounts or reactivation of old accounts or anything cool like that with your service?
Yeah, without going too far into it.
Sure.
So 2020 has been a huge year for us, just basically hockey sticking the whole way, particularly since the beginning of COVID. You saw that with Robinhood and that whole craze, and that attention has also come into the crypto side of things as well, which is great. So once we got to August, things were really blowing up. And then I'd say sort of the last month and a half or so it slowed down slightly, but not in some crazy way. And then right now we're actually seeing a big jump again. So the people that signed up during that big run are now being significantly more active than they were when they first signed up. Now that they see, they came in, bought their first couple $100 of Bitcoin, and they were just sitting on it. Now that they see the price has appreciated since they bought it, they're continuing to accumulate and grow their positions. So that's what we're seeing on our side.
I think if we have to compare it to another year, we'd be in Q4 2016, right? The big headlines and the mania, they only come when the all-time high is broken.
Yeah, and we're not even really seeing the headlines yet, really, for the most part.
Yeah, I think there's always some screenshot of the Google Bitcoin trending on Google, right? And that's still, I think, completely flat. So I feel like we're not even into 2017 yet.
Absolutely.
I agree with Brad.
I want to hear from Will.
I think I definitely agree with Brad here that I have had an unprecedented amount of people texting, emailing who were maybe part of the first wave and maybe kind of dipped their toes in. They got burned, came up way too high at the top, but they knew about it and they continued their educational journey. And they are now coming back being like, I feel it again. This reminds me of something. I'm not going to miss out. And so I think there's definitely that hodl wave of 2017 that came by that are now, it's hard when you see that crash and you may lose a little bit of faith a little bit, but then as you see the cycles continue to recur, you start to get a bit of a stronger conviction around it and make bigger moves. And so what I've loved about it is that I have now far more great Bitcoin companies and services to point people towards. I think the other day someone texted me saying, I need to get out of fiat immediately. They were looking at the election and they said, can you help me out? And I tagged the guys over at River. They brought them down and definitely solidified a very strong new Bitcoiner. So I'm super excited. And I would also say this at play right now is the floor is set. The weak hands have been shaken out in a big way. And so that's when we see these big pulls up 1,000 or so, it's really hard to break that floor. So that's good to see.
So I guess my follow-up question is, when is it different, right? Like obviously Bitcoin kind of oscillates and at some point it's going to be the point of no return. So I guess when is it going to be different? And another to follow up is David, when you're not speaking, please mute yourself. There's a little bit of background noise where you're at.
Gotcha. No worries, man.
David, if you want to jump in on what.
Well, just on pricing, this is one of those kind of very bizarre issues. Is that we're on the retail side. People come and buy tickets from us. They buy hotels. They go on trips and stuff. And what we found is that when the Bitcoin price is going down, people stop using Bitcoin or crypto for purchases. They're using their fiat. They're using their credit card. But as soon as we see an uptake in the purchase online for flights or whatever, using crypto or using Bitcoin in particular, we know that the price is going up. And it's kind of weird. It's like a 2 to 3 week leader. It's like the price is going up. And so you know what? October and so far November, absolutely records for us for online Bitcoin purchases. The public, the unseen, not the investors, but the general public who might be using Bitcoin as a vehicle for purchasing, they're strong. And just based on historical, this is not just like something we noticed this time, but this is like 2 or 3 runs. We've seen the same thing. So it's going up, and because the strength is so strong, it looks like it's going to go for a while. I'll let you know when they stop buying.
That's an awesome leading indicator. And I mean, I'm sure similar things with exchanges, similar things with other Bitcoin retail apps. I guess, does anyone have a different kind of point of view? Haven't heard from Albert yet. Maybe you can jump in here.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so we see like definitely as soon as we see any type of price tag, especially down here in Asia, it's a little bit different, right? So there's gonna be a different, I would say two different mindsets, right? The Western mindset's more kind of huddle. I don't really want to spend anything. But out here, a lot of people actually use it for purchases, like kind of like Dave brought up, because Dave's one of our merchants that's on our platform, and we have a lot of Lightning transactions that come through. Although they're not that big, our average size is probably around, I would say, probably around $10 to $15, and that's usually just for food products or whatever it is that they need, either it's household items or just kind of food and drinking in general. But we see that as an indicator as soon as just any type of uptick, people just start to spend, and that's probably just a natural kind of occurrence, right? So the higher it goes, it's more of like a human psychology kind of thing, the tendency to kind of just buy the things that they want to pick up, or just kind of just want to splurge in a way. So that's kind of what we see on our side, and as soon as we see the price of an uptick in Bitcoin in any type of range. So
Albert, is spin and replace a big part of culture there, or is, like you mentioned in Western culture, it's hodl at all costs? Or is spin and replace a thing?
sorry, you said spend and replace, you said?
Yeah, spend and replace. So I might spend some Bitcoin on something, but I'm gonna replenish my stack ASAP to recover my position.
I'm not too sure. Like I can't say too much about that. All we do is we see a lot of just kind of the spending habits and kind of what people are actually looking for. Here is mostly it's a huge food culture here, right? So a lot of people will come out to, like, a great example is like when we have our Bitcoin meetups on Thursday. We get a lot of new people that come in probably like every week. And then just kind of just on the outside of that meeting, we see uh people purchasing it. I can't say if they're actually replenishing it because we don't have a metric for saying if they're buying and buying back. But some of the people that we do kind of talk to, which I could speak on, is probably the people that we do in Bitcoin meeting that they do replenish. So they'll buy, like we'll have tacos on Thursday, which was like yesterday, and then they'll go right back and replenish it. So it's kind of just kind of helping, kind of showing that there is a use for Bitcoin, right? Besides just holding it and kind of speculating on it, but actually using it as a function for medium and exchange is quite exciting for people, right? Because it's a little bit different, even though it's kind of the same. So the wallets that we have here, kind of to kind of give you an example, is we have a wallet here that's called like Momo. So it's kind of the similar to WeChat, and so people kind of are already used to kind of the QR scanning. And kind of just sending payments kind of near instantly, right? So we have to be very competitive in that space. We can't be having anything that's slow. So for example, we have support for stable coins for a specific reason, but that's a little bit slow, right? Even though it's kind of like I believe we have it as 15 confirmation times, but still it's not as quick as, say, when we do a Lightning payment. So when we have a Lightning payment, it's literally near instantly. So it's anywhere between 1 or 2 seconds, and everyone's blown away as soon as they start using it. But when you start trying to use a stable coin, it's anywhere between maybe 15 to 20 seconds. Depends on the Ethereum network, right? So it kind of crapped the bed, I think yesterday or a couple of days ago with Inferior's infrastructure going down. But just the kind of whole euphoria of, hey, there's a new payment solution that we can kind of use. We can kind of use it for general purpose items like anything else, even though Vietnam is a cash heavy kind of country. But people just kind of slowly moving over to a cashless society and using Bitcoin or using kind of e-wallets kind of just helps kind of the circular economy that we're trying to move here in general. So that's kind of what we see.
Albert, are those taxable events when you're spending Bitcoin in your area? Is that an issue on people's head?
In Vietnam, it's a very tricky thing here, right? I believe it is, because when we talk to our lawyer, the taxes are because they don't consider it a currency, and they don't consider it a commodity, which is really odd to us. So what they do classify it as you can buy the instrument, I guess they would call it. That's kind of the best way I can convert it into English, is they would say you can buy this instrument and it's legal. You can buy and sell it, but you can't accept it for any form of purchase. It's a very gray line area here. So what we kind of do is we kind of use the loophole in that and say, if anyone here is a Vietnam merchant, we'll have to instantly convert it into VND. And so for that tax implication, when we talk to our lawyers on it, like, how do we tax it for them? And there really isn't clear answer for us at the moment.
So let me just jump in here because we are a Vietnam merchant, and the reason that we are on Lightning is because of Albert, and we worked with Albert and Neutron Pay to make sure that we were compliant with Vietnamese law. Every single transaction that is coming off of Neutron Pay inside of Vietnam, at least, is being generated in the local currency in Vietnam dong. Okay, so if you go to a merchant like us, we by law have to display the VND amount on the invoice, on the tax invoice. So here it is. Here's the VND. How you're settling it? Are you settling it in euros? Are you settling it in settling it in US dollars? Are you settling it in Bitcoin? The central bank doesn't care as long as at the bottom of the ledger it says VND. And Neutron Pay and we use another provider for other coins, paybitcoin.vn. They make sure that everything is showing up as VND, and that's how we stay legally compliant, because the Vietnamese government is very strict that you cannot advertise in anything except for VND. You cannot advertise in Canadian dollars. You cannot advertise in US dollars. Okay, you cannot advertise in Bitcoin. It must be in VND. And you know what? Neutron Pay, Bitcoin, or pay.bitcoin.vn, they've nailed it. They've got it so that we're compliant. And I think that's part of the reason that this uptake and this new wave of merchants and purchases are coming into the situation. So yeah, it's just for anybody who's listening, who's around the world, who has regulatory issues, there is a way to do it, and you just have to think outside the square, and it is possible.
It's funny how draconian the regulation issues and how that's the one thing that's getting in the way from people just actually doing business. But I think we've fully transitioned to our next topic, which is talking about the Bitcoin circular economy. Strangely, for a money and a community centered around money, the circular economy is slightly kind of like a taboo subject amongst some groups. Like it's been mentioned in the West, obviously hodling is very encouraged. I think that you can hodl in a circular economy personally. Like, I don't think that they're mutually exclusive. I want to jump over to Leo. Obviously, you've been in Bitcoin for a long time. You've been educating and stimulating the circular economy in Hong Kong and in the greater, Asian regions for a long time. Can you kind of comment about, Bitcoin's march and the development of its economy?
So we've always had difficulties getting people to pay in Bitcoin. And we've also had difficulties converting merchants to accept Bitcoin. Interestingly, it was a bit more easy in 2014 when we had our first merchant accepting Bitcoin, or late 2013. It was a bar in Lang Kwai Fong here in Hong Kong. Partly because back then we still had Hong Kong-based payment processors, which no longer exist, but also partly because I think people back then had much stronger expectations in like Bitcoin's meteoric rise. I think in 2014 people were saying, well, this is going to take over everything within a year. So then they wanted to get in on it right away. But now expectations are a lot more slower. And in Hong Kong, the conversation has shifted a lot to investment and to trading and to tokens. And I think that harms a bit of Bitcoin's like narrative of being good as money, of being better money, and of actually being quite convenient to accept. So then also when we do find a merchant that accepts Bitcoin and we do promote that merchant, or we do host events at that venue, then the number of people that join our meetup and actually do pay in Bitcoin is still relatively small. And when people do it, they do it for like experimental reasons. So sadly, I have to admit that we haven't been incredibly successful at establishing a circular Hong Kong Bitcoin economy. We have succeeded at getting a lot of people to install Bitcoin wallets and taking like a bit of a careful dive into it. Maybe Bitcoin is also still too difficult to buy in Hong Kong, and that's by like regulatory design. We don't have any tax issues of selling Bitcoin. We don't have any taxes for like we don't have any capital gains taxes. We don't have any VAT. We don't have to worry about any of this. So theoretically, this spend and replace should be quite easy from a tax perspective. But a lot of people, they do go through quite a few significant hurdles when buying Bitcoin. And so then when they have their little stack, they might not want to easily spend it, because like how do they get it back? How do they replenish it? And for the kind of expenditures that people make, you know, they're in the size of like 10 to 100 US dollars typically. Then buying Bitcoins in those small amounts is actually relatively hard in Hong Kong. We don't have Cash App, or we don't have whatever PayPal solution to that is going to be. We only have the ATMs, and we have the peer-to-peer markets, and we have OTC brokers, and none of them make it very easy for you to just convert 100 US dollars. You either go for the 10,000 US dollars, or you stay Satoshi free.
Leo, did you?
Wow,
I may
yeah.
have missed it. Did you say that was because of regulatory reasons, or just has the market not demanded that?
It's not precise regulation. There's no law that forbids you from selling Bitcoin, or there's no law that even like very much restricts you. But the monetary authority has gone to regulated institutions in Hong Kong, meaning debit card issuers or banks or payment providers, and said like, do not touch Bitcoin. And then that's while that's not law, that's in a place like Hong Kong, that that recommendation is then respected. And so there haven't been any successful exchanges that can make it easy for you to just. There's so many convenient payment methods in Hong Kong. Most of them function only locally, but they do function relatively well with low fees. But no Bitcoin companies be able to plug into those. Otherwise, there'd be like a million different ways to buy Bitcoin in Hong Kong, and it'd be all relatively easy. People have even failed to establish Bitcoin voucher systems that are sold at convenience stores, because the convenience stores are like, after the initial discussions confirming that this is quite interesting and something they want to get into, they have these like back channel chats with what the government thinks, and they're like, oh no, we don't want to offend anybody, we don't want to get in trouble with anybody. That's kind of how partly Hong Kong's economy is very monopolistic and has always been. So there aren't that many players, and they don't want to step on each other's foot. And the one tycoon agrees not to get into finance, and the other tycoon agrees not to get into retail supermarkets. So then the retail supermarket says, oh, we don't want to sell Bitcoin because we don't do the finance stuff.
I'm curious, like, I mean, I feel like this might sound kind of weak, but I feel like a lot of Bitcoiners say like at some point there is a number where Bitcoin price reaches where they change their mind. And I feel like we're starting to kind of see that already in the West. It sounds like Hong Kong in particular, and I know that in China, mainland China, they're pretty hostile against fiat to crypto interactions, and most of it is happening kind of on WeChat or OTC and stuff like that. There's not like formal exchanges that accept fiat. So, I mean, I'm kind of curious, folks in other jurisdictions that are maybe like, what's happening in the West. I mean, maybe Will, you can speak to a little bit. Like, it seems as though there's a lot of KYC, but outside of that, like, there's not a whole lot of getting in the way.
Yeah, I mean, we've to David's point earlier, we there has historically been a cycle of when people turn to pay Bitcoin as a payment method in the West, at least, and that's mostly when you hit some kind of spike and people are kind of enjoying their gains. Now, I will say, as of yesterday, Fold's Lightning payments have doubled, and I just went back to just go look at that and be like, why? And well, we've seen some spikes there, but I actually don't think it accounts even for that. So we've also seen a extremely rapid pace of just ease of use and accessibility to some of these technologies. So you're looking at what Blue Wallet, Breeze, Strike have all contributed to the ecosystem about making this as extremely easy to use. And then it's paired with the actual incentives on the other side. So with Fold, you get extra cash back when you spend your Bitcoin. So both the infrastructure and incentive layer are now there, whereas in the past they may not have been as strong. But undoubtedly, Fold's success so far has all been because of Bitcoin's savings technology number go up, not necessarily means of exchange, but we're actively developing those technologies there, and we see that continuing to grow. The capital gains issue continues to be an issue for Bitcoiners in the West, but it's coming to a point where, and you see this in the PayPal's big press release about them accepting Bitcoin, is that they specifically said that when you spend Bitcoin with them, you won't be hit with a taxable event. Now, that's for maybe not the best reasons. It's because you're pretty much using an IOU on PayPal. But everyone's starting to understand the pressure is building for people to use that, or people to understand it. Because a lot of people just understand money that way as a means of exchange, even though Bitcoin is first and foremost, in my opinion, a store of value. But at the end of the day, it's really who you are and where you come from and what value you see out of Bitcoin. And so I have a strong feeling, you'll see all the memes even starting about how many Zillow tabs you have open. I guarantee you some hodlers will be spending in the next run up, but it's certainly something that continues to develop.
Yeah, and I think there's two big things that are different this time around than 2017. One is Lightning, because what always happens is that Bitcoin starts to go up. You think that you want to now spend your Bitcoin, and then you see that it's like a $5 fee, right? And I think that can really put a damper on the circular economy when Bitcoin starts to go into a bull market. And so I think this year is going to be really interesting, because with all the Lightning infrastructure out there being built up, you're going to be able to send Bitcoin now to merchants without paying those fees. Obviously, the channel stuff is more complicated, but I think there's a lot of different tools and service providers there to solve that. Then the other big thing is, just like Will was saying, the infrastructure is so much more mature. I was blown away setting up a BTC Pay for our online store a couple months ago. We decided not to use Shopify. We decided to self-host our own website on WooCommerce and WordPress, and start using BTC Pay. I had used it a couple of years back before, and it just was very challenging to set up. And now it was kind of amazing, and so simple, where customer places an order, they get an email when the transaction is pending, they get an automatic email from our store when the transaction is confirmed. It was all seamless. We found someone on Twitter to design the custom CSS page for us, and it was just really easy. And now with BTC Pay integrated as of, I think, just a few weeks back or a month or two ago in Shopify, I think that opens a world of possibilities. And there's also more centralized providers. So I think when you combine Lightning with all the infrastructure, we haven't even seen anything get started. I think 2021 is going to be huge.
Bullish.
Huge fan of BTC
Yeah, I feel
Pay.
like, oh yeah, BTC Pay is absolutely incredible. And the fact that it's just absolutely free, you can download it, and then bam, you just like have everything plug and play that you could need. It's just, and it's only going to get better from here. Like,
and they're so responsive too. So we have to issue refunds sometimes. And so, I went on their GitHub, made an issue, said we want to be able to issue partial refunds, where you just enter in the dollar amount or whatever local currency, and it gets refunded in Bitcoin. And within a week, they had already updated it. And then it was live the next release, like a week after that. And I was just like amazed that, you just go submit an issue request to an open source payment processor, and a couple weeks later, you have that feature that you want, in the program, and it's there for everyone. And I think just that speed is going to be, I'm very bullish on self-hosted payment processors.
Do you think, I feel like over the next couple years, we're going to see this big rise of like integrators. Like if you look at enterprise technology, you see these third-party services that strictly come in and they will bid out jobs and scope them, and then they'll actually lead the actual project management for a company. And I can see, I mean, of course, a BTC pay server is a very small application, but it can be mission critical if a business is built on top of it. So I kind of see in the future, we're going to see kind of boutique shops pop up. And I think there's some individuals, at least here in the US, that are building an expertise around deploying these things. But I think the next wave will be some kind of service offering that can address that and all the other various parts of the Bitcoin ecosystem, which is pretty exciting. It just goes to show you that, this new way of money is going to, create new opportunities for business. So that's a good thing.
Yeah, just sort of to follow on from what you're saying, one of the things that make this all work is if it becomes the new type of money. And for it to become the new type of money, it means it has to have mass adoption. And mass adoption means mom and dad, grandma and grandpa, everybody suddenly starts figuring out, how to use a QR code, just like they already do when they go down to the local grocery store and use their phone or their tap and pay, whatever. So we really need to get it down to something really, really simple that grandma and grandpa and the parents and everybody else can actually go, yeah, this is my wallet. This is my Bitcoin wallet, but it's my wallet, because to them it's money. Ultimately, this is the value that they're using. They're transferring value to get something in the shopping cart. And so really one of the successes that we see, you're talking about BTC Pay being absolutely brilliant. Well, that's on a B2B level, business to business level. It really doesn't involve the consumer other than they're part of that transaction. But on the other side of the coin are these wallets, and I heard Blue and the Breeze and a couple of others, but they're really for the technophiles, the people that understand Bitcoin and love it. But what's there for grandma and grandpa? And 2 thumbs up for Wallet of Satoshi. They are it is a custodial wallet, for the people who if you don't hold the keys, it's not yours. Grandma and grandpa don't care about that. The money's in the wallet. Somebody steals my wallet, I understand that. Okay, so keep your phone safe, grandma. But Wallet of Satoshi has done something to make it so simple to unload people who know nothing about it and to make a transaction work. And just going back to the example of that CK had of I went to BTC Pay and we want to do a partial refund. As a merchant, I totally understand that. We went to a Wallet of Satoshi and said, look, we're in Vietnam. We got 90 million people here. And there's not a Vietnamese wallet anywhere in the world. Can you do that? 2 weeks. You go to Wallet of Satoshi now, and it actually has a Vietnamese version. So the price of Bitcoin is going to go up, and part of that's going to be driven by the public demand to be able to use it in the marketplace. The marketplace is going to demand to have it, and it's something simple. So I can see the next wave sort of on the consumer side of being, we'll say Wallet of Satoshi 2 or the equivalent, where it has everything that Wallet of Satoshi has for the easy onloading, but maybe some more security things and maybe the ability for it to not be custodial, where you can actually hold your own coins. But yeah, there's exciting things happening, particularly on the retail side, to get it all happening fast.
Leo, what do you think the user experience has it advanced since you first got into the space? Because I think my answer would be like, it just keeps getting better from what I've seen.
Absolutely.
I think when we did our first events we called these plug and pay events. So we partnered with quite a few institutions, sometimes co-working spaces or educational spaces, or sometimes just our audience. And the idea of the event was to not explain Bitcoin in technical terms, but rather just have a 15-minute introduction of the very, very basics, right? All you really need to know. It's money. Nobody controls it. You can buy it and sell it peer to peer. It lives on your phone or your computer, really just as short as this. We charge about let's let's say about like $10 entrance to these events, and we'd give people back $10 worth of Bitcoin. And then we'd sell them like $2 beers. So we'd kind of structure the event so that everybody gets to set up a wallet, everybody gets to receive a transaction, everybody gets to make a payment. As it was in 2013, 14, 15, with blocks being empty and transactions being pretty much free, the experience back then was quite good. And that's also kind of like set the tone for what we expect Bitcoin to go. But of course, already back then, we knew that this can't really continue like this, and it's not really sustainable. So for the user experience, then over the last year, over the last maybe 2 years, I think that feel good experience of being able to do an event like that has slowly come back. And we're slowly getting back to the point where we are actually confident again that if we have 30 people in the room, we are actually able to get $10 worth of Bitcoin onto 30 phones. So we did our Lightning demo day. We're not exactly under lockdown, but we still have a bit of some social distancing measures in Hong Kong. So we had a relatively small audience for the Lightning Hack Day, but and it was also a bit of a trial run because of course I can try this out between myself to recommend different wallets, but then what it actually looked like on different people's phones and with their level of expertise. I think that user experience is really coming back. I would be confident right now to do an event like Plug and Pay again, where we just say, hey, set up a wallet. Here we teach you how to, and then we probably quite these wallets that we've looked at. They are either custodial, David, you mentioned Wallet of Satoshi, Blue Wallet, but even the non-custodial ones have some for example, BLW has a custodial channel with you set up, right, as you start. So you're immediately able to receive, and then you can later close that custodial channel and kind of get your funds into a non-custodial one. Some other wallets have similar features. So we are actually able to do that again. And then, of course, our confidence in Bitcoin rises, but also then this good user experience of being able to receive a small amount, immediately make a payment does come back. And for that to improve, I think we do need a Lightning peer-to-peer or ATM machine-based or exchange market where people are then able to buy small amounts. And I think that will, at least in Hong Kong, hugely change the equation of being able to buy back the sats that you spend, but also just slowly dip your toes. I think that's massively missing. Brad and Will, you were talking earlier about how you observe currently people going into Bitcoin. And for me, the experiences are somewhat similar, but given the constraints in Hong Kong, I feel that a lot of people that have asked me over the last half year on how to buy Bitcoin, as the price has been slowly recovering back to previous highs, have been people who've been dipping their toes into Bitcoin 2 or 3 years ago and who've now been slowly watching it. And now they're ready to make that step, but it has to be a big step. So they have to they need to think about, okay, so I was able to save up let's say $1,000, $2,000, $5,000 over the last few months. I'm going to put that in Bitcoin, right? And for everything to really change, people need to be able to go to a Bitcoin ATM, of which there are, I think, 70 in Hong Kong, and really need to put in a $10 node and get a quick Lightning transaction out.
So I mean, I think Leo, you bring up a good point that, and we've revolved around this point, which is obviously we want to develop a circular economy because we want Bitcoin to be self-sustaining, but it needs people valuing Bitcoin first, right? Store of value is the first, it's the first prominent use case. And I think that all of this stuff happens on kind of its own, in its own very level. It's not like black and white store of value, medium of exchange. It's all kind of granular. But I'm kind of curious, what do you think about the store of value narrative, and is it still the dominant one, and how important is it for people to value this stuff before they volunteer to accept it? So I haven't heard from Brad in a while, and I know that eToro is a lot more on the exchange your fiat for Bitcoin side of the trade. So the store value narrative, the trading investing narrative is, kind of what's more important to your business. So I'm kind of curious, how you're thinking about it.
Yeah, I think with our user base, we actually have a lot of either brand new crypto consumers or the people that Leo was just alluding to, the people who came in maybe in 2017 and either, maybe they felt burnt, so they hadn't been around for a while, or they just sort of left it in Coinbase or something and is just circling back now. So what we hear from our customers is that they're largely diversifying other portfolios, right? So they might have a 401k, they might have a Robinhood account where they've been, buying Tesla and whatever else, and they've got a small growing portfolio. But these people tend to be younger, skew younger, and are interested in the new things. So Bitcoin's definitely in that category. And people who fall in that customer segment really do love Bitcoin. It's one of the things that they're most likely to invest in based on, a lot of consumer reports that are coming out these days. So we see a lot of that traffic coming towards us.
I'd say from looking at the data we've seen at Fold, it's really interesting about this whole circular economy narrative. You quickly get into this chicken or the egg thing. And I'm increasingly confident that store of value is the key to unlocking the circular economy. It is obviously important to have the infrastructure to make Bitcoin spending easier, simpler, more incentivized. But at the end of the day, the biggest thing is, how are you going to convince a merchant to accept Bitcoin over their local currency? And if you can unlock that answer, then you start to have a segment of merchants valuing the acceptance of Bitcoin higher than any other currency available to them. So you start to see this with the recent moves on Square or MicroStrategy, where actually corporations and even businesses down to Tahini's restaurant start to put Bitcoin in their reserve asset as their major reserve asset. And that's signaling that these merchants are making a bet that Bitcoin is a more stable, more safe bastion than actually holding all of your fiat. And so it's equally important to continue to make the accessibility, the user experience easier, but the conceptual battle of having merchants value and wanting to accept Bitcoin more than other options is the real key that will unlock a widespread circular economy. And, we have found this at Fold because, we saw the first thing was, why aren't people spending Bitcoin? Well, taxable gain, taxable event, it's slow on chain, and there's zero incentive to do it. There's no rewards points or anything like that maybe your credit card would give you. And so Fold has been pretty active about solving all of those issues, and we've done a pretty good job. We'll soon get a lot closer, but you need the other side. And once those other merchants start valuing Bitcoin as a store of value, that's the foundation for the circular economy to grow on.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that there was really no narrative that I can remember, like in 2017. The only thing I can remember was some drama at the end of 2016 with forks, and then all of a sudden we entered some huge bull market. I think now, with the narrative being all about store value and a hedge against inflation, I think we're much better positioned this time around. Being in the US, we don't think about inflation that much, with the US dollar being the, really like the global currency. But I think, especially in other parts of the world, with all the money that's being dumped into the global economies due to the governmental responses to COVID, I think that inflation is going to become a real concern for normal people over the next couple years. And we'll see what happens next year. And so as that becomes top of mind and kind of becomes part of the narrative that Bitcoin will protect you from inflation, I think we'll see a lot of merchants want to at least experiment with holding some Bitcoin and accepting it. And sorry, David, I cut you off there.
And no worries. I was just going to follow up on something that Will was saying, and certainly Zach with that last little bit of the statement. So one of the things that we've noticed in Vietnam, is this merchant uptake that's just coming along, and I've talked to the merchants when I go and see them, because I support the economy, and whenever I go to a merchant that has supports Lightning in particular, because Bitcoin just doesn't work, but Lightning does. I said, why did you do it? Why did you do it now? And they're going, well, he said, this one fellow, he says, look, the first thing I had to do is I had to convince my staff. And this comes back to something that Leo was talking about in Hong Kong. It really is a social issue. It's not government. Government doesn't say, Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies are not illegal in Vietnam, unless you're going to advertise it as a price. They treat them like peanuts or nuts and bolts. It's not a currency. He says, so the first thing he had to do is come back and convince all of his staff that it was perfectly legal to accept Bitcoin, because there's a lot of misinformation going around. He said the other thing is he had to educate them that this is a whole new channel of market for them. These are people that they weren't getting before. And, if you're in business, you just want to build your business, and as long as it's legal, you want to continue to build the market. And so, probably, and I think Albert can probably back me up on this, is that most of the new merchants who are coming onto the Lightning platform are the ones who see the ability to accept Bitcoin or crypto as an expansion of their existing market to grow the market. And it's not necessarily convincing the rest of the world, but it is to grab a market share that they don't currently have. And you know what? I'm one of those. I'm guilty. I went into Bitcoin, into crypto, because I wanted to grab the market, or part of the market that I didn't have access to. And I think the world, and merchants in particular, have cottoned on that, hey, this is not going to go away. We better be involved and be able to offer it to customers, because it's going to give us a new customer base who actually have something that is tradable, something that they can hodl. Some of the people take that crypto or that Bitcoin, and they're holding it, and others are instantly converting it to cash. Albert, I don't know what you think about that, but am I pretty spot on? Am I close?
Yeah, no, you're really spot on, Dave. When we approach the merchants and stuff, especially like local retail, like Dave, this too. Like when we go out, local retailers now have a huge kind of uptick in people that want to accept crypto, and it's like Dave said before, it's more about just the education, kind of getting the staff on board, but kind of basically, kind of for any merchant here, is they just want to be able to make money, and so whatever form of money that is, whether it's going to be Bitcoin, Lightning, or cash, they just want that to come in. And so a lot of the merchants here don't have like an access to a bank account, and so they don't have the credit cards, they don't have the financial services that as the West would have. So they're very limited to what they can do with their business, and they know that cash isn't the best way, because cash just kind of stacks up. It kind of, especially here, there's not hyperinflation here, but there is a little bit of inflation here, and they know that, and they want to get into an instrument that's able for them to be that safe, it's secure, and it's not going to kind of inflate in the next year or so. So when we talk to these merchants, they love the idea. They want to get onto it, more local than online, which is kind of interesting to us. So I think it's just kind of just more the little shops that say, hey, especially in Vietnam, when you go down a street, literally you can go down one street, and Dave can attest to this, is you literally go down a street and there's 50 shops, like literally on each side of the street. And so whatever you're looking for, there's always a shop that's always trying to sell you something, or they want to be able to sell something. So adding this kind of feature and kind of getting either expats or foreigners come in, any type of money that's accepted for the product, they're more than willing to accept. And so that's allowed us to kind of attack this kind of segment very easily, because for Neutron Pay, we had a feature that was kind of more dedicated to online streaming. And so we wanted to have more people to kind of donate through Bitcoin Lightning, and we would kind of do the conversions in the back for them if they wanted the cash or not. But for some reason, the local retail people have taken on to this feature quite aggressively, because it's easier for them to use. It's easier for them to use with their staff as well. So that's kind of what we've seen so far.
So I want to jump in. Oh, go for it, David.
Just a little quick thing. So these merchants who are actually receiving the Bitcoin over the counter, part of them are going, I want cash. It needs to be Vietnam dollars. The invoices are coming in BND, Neutron Pay actually gives you the ability to accept 100% of it as Bitcoin, or 100% of it as fiat, or a percentage thereof. But what the merchants that I've spoken to, some of the local guys, they're hodling a little bit, but more importantly, they want the vehicle to be able to use the Bitcoin to send to support their families overseas, which is completely tipping on its head the way things used to be. It used to be everybody would send money to Vietnam to support their poor families. Well, you know what? Now the Vietnamese are sending their money overseas to support the coronavirus people who don't have jobs in the US or wherever they happen to be. And so a lot of, I would say 99% of the merchants are saying, hey, I'll accept Bitcoin, not because I want to hold it and everything, but I want to be able to send money I want to be able to send something to my families overseas. And, we have an ATM in the office, that's Lightning. Every single transaction that's come through, I said, oh, what are you going to do with it? He said, oh, I'm giving it to my brother, my sister overseas. None of it is actually staying in Vietnam. It is immediately going to support family overseas.
I mean, so Dave, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Go. I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry, CK. Yeah, I was going to add into that. They brought a really good point, because we just brought in a couple merchants. I can't see who they are, but there's one guy who's from India too, and he brought up that same thing. He said, the stuff that we're actually accepting here is mostly going to be sent back to India to help my family or help friends of friends. And so, yeah, that was pretty kind of, different spin on how we see merchants using it and spending it and how they want to keep it. But yeah, for the foreseeable future right now, what we've seen so far is most recently is most of the merchants that now accept it are actually just sending it over to family members overseas, whether it's, the US or different parts of the country. But yeah, that's what we've seen.
So I've been trying to transition us to the next subject, which is what are the strongest Bitcoin narratives? I'm glad that Albert and you and David interjected, because very interesting narrative. One of which, SOV, we've heard that a lot. One of which we don't hear as much is neutral, global, permissionless settlement layer. And that's kind of like what you guys are alluding to. I know there's a lot of companies built on that. Paxful is one of them, local Bitcoins. But, you could just plug anything into Bitcoin, gift cards or whatever. So, I mean, I guess transitioning into this subject of what's the most powerful narrative for Bitcoin moving forward? I mean, there's a lot of them. This is a multifaceted beast. What do you think if you could choose one narrative to take us from here to the next all-time high, what's the most important narrative? I want to jump to Zach. Zach, haven't heard from you in a minute. You are kind of on a different side of things. Most of these guys are a lot more on the investment or circular economy. You're storing Bitcoin. So I'm curious what your perspective is.
Yeah, I think besides the inflation narrative, which I think is probably the biggest narrative, I think it's the most important one. I think there's just this element of privacy that we think a lot about at Foundation. Right now, I think we have the beginning of maybe a decade-long trend in a swing back to privacy for consumers. You see major companies like Apple touting privacy as one of their biggest differentiators. And while we could argue and get into the weeds of how existing companies approach privacy, I think the idea that you could store your own money, you can send transactions to people, and none of that is being monitored. If, of course, on the Bitcoin side, you go through the right privacy precautions and maybe do things like, mixing your coins or doing something like pay join. So I think a lot of those technologies will really take off in this decade. And I think the idea that you can have control over your own money and have that basic level of privacy, I think it really becomes like a human right. And I think it's something that's going to differentiate Bitcoin over the next several years as we see an increase in government surveillance and infringements on, basic human rights across the world.
I think that's a pretty good point.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm curious. That's a fantastic American perspective, and that's something that I think about a lot.
Very American.
Well, I mean, for sure. I mean, I'm ignorant. That's where I live. I live in probably the least tech advanced state in the friggin' nation. I'm in Arkansas. But for us, I mean, the narratives are different. And I think that for me personally, I mean, just to give my opinion, is that store value is the number one narrative, because I believe that it drags everything else along. Like, you're not going to have a medium of exchange if it's not worth something. But I'm also at the camp of, like, spend it at the merchants that accept it, but also spend and replace, keep your stack growing, keep it up and to the right. And, we sure do have a lot of on-ramps here in the States that I do not take for granted. I mean, it stinks to hear about some of the challenges that you're facing, Leo, that there's just not a lot of on-ramps for people to get their hands on small amounts. I mean, I think over this past bear market, we've seen the emergence of DCA being a real thing, dollar cost averaging. And that is something that is part of that kind of maximalist narrative, HODL, DCA, stack sats for salvation, these things that we kind of are religious about, and that the tribe beats their chest about. But yeah, for me personally, just to give my 2 cents, I believe that, store value, number one, without that, you're not going to get the next wave of adoption. If I think about Murad's curve, I don't know if you guys are familiar with it. He outlines all the different ways that we go from, magic internet money to global reserve currency. I think store value, kind of where we're at now, is one of those boxes we've got to check first. But some of the things that we've touched on, the emergence of Lightning since 17 has been huge. I'm real excited and bullish about, what Loop has to bring, because that's going to be the next big thing, guys. Payments fees are going to go up, and then people are going to be like, well, how the hell do I get liquidity for Lightning? How does this happen? And now, like we said earlier, an emerging new opportunity for Bitcoiners to get some kind of yield for their Bitcoin. So overall, I mean, my 2 cents is the store value, but I'm definitely fascinated by, our friends overseas, what their perspective would be.
Joe, look, and this kind of comes back to what Zach was saying, is it's the difficulty of buying Bitcoin, whether it's regulatory or just finding a source or fees. And this is where Lightning comes in. So look, I live in Vietnam. On my street, the average income is about $400 maybe a month. But the GDP average income for the nation is probably about $1,200 a year. So how do you get these people to buy Bitcoin? Because $20,000 Bitcoin is like years. That's 20 years of savings. So we've put in a Lightning ATM. We're the first Lightning ATM in Asia. And what it does is it allows people to walk down the street from here, and we've actually set the level pretty high. They can buy Bitcoin, they can buy Lightning Bitcoin for 50 cents. Okay, that's the minimum spend. We could have dropped it down to about 10 cents, but because of the ability and the low fees that are there, we're making it possible. And I'll put a link in here for how we built the ATM. So you're in Arkansas, there's no reason there can't be a Lightning ATM on every bloody street corner selling Bitcoin. And get it out there. And you know what?
We just got the internet in Arkansas, okay? And we got one stoplight.
Okay, yeah. Well, you got the dial-up modem, so you're there. Look, it'll work on this.
You can get Starlink.
So the ability to get to on-ramp people is really, really important. To help equalize and let people be in charge of to be their own bank, and part of that is to make sure they have an access to do it. Like I said, Lightning, wallet of Satoshi, all these very simple things makes it happen.
I think that something exciting that kind of Will touched on earlier, we're talking about merchant adoption, and this is just not a paid shill, but our friends at OpenNode, they're kind of do a service, and they allow companies to accept Bitcoin, but for small companies here in Little Rock, one of the challenges that I run into is they're like, well, I have bills to pay in fiat. I don't want to hold a bunch of Bitcoin. But for me, I'm like, if you accepted Bitcoin, there's Bitcoiners who would spend money with you. So a neat thing that like OpenNode service that they offer is they will accept Bitcoin, but then for the merchant, they can convert it to fiat for them. And for the merchant, they can decide to hold a percentage of each transaction in Bitcoin. So let's say that, I convince maybe a merchant that, let's say they're selling a barbecue
Joe,
grill.
I'm sorry. Can I?
Yeah.
I apologize. I need to cut you off. I mean, my problem with that is that I don't think that any serious person that actually wants to accept Bitcoin will use a solution like that. And there's just not enough, there's not enough payment side for that actually to make a difference. So I don't buy it for like that kind of a solution. I think that it has to start with store value. It has to start with the merchant saying, I freaking value Bitcoin. I want to earn Bitcoin, and fuck fiat. Like if I get Bitcoin, I'm going to hodl it. Like BTC Media does this.
Yeah.
We give a $50 discount on all of our tickets to our conference, and we don't sell a freaking Satoshi. We stack every one of those, right? So that's what it starts with. And like, I'm sorry, OpenNode, that's great. It's a freaking marketing gimmick. And
Hey, I hear you.
matter.
And look, I'm not a business
Sorry.
operator, so I'm partially talking right out of my ass, which is fine, guys. So y'all can slap me around. Zach, get me in a headlock later, okay? Well, all you guys. So
I
just think it's fascinating.
I maybe bridge these two positions here is that, earlier we talked about how, a lot of these services in the Bitcoin ecosystem has been, and businesses have been built for Bitcoiners. People understand it, OpenNode, processing payments, Fold, earning rewards, letting you shop at major retailers. But what we're seeing is all of these, with this renewed interest, all of these companies are now going to be providing platform services for third parties, maybe incumbent companies, organizations that maybe do something with fiat, but that want to get involved in Bitcoin. And so, I think the power of OpenNode is what happens when OpenNode is approached by one of the major processors and saying, hey, we would like to add an option for accepting Bitcoin in your for your existing setup. If you use Stripe already, if you're using, the TabaPay, Dwolla, whatever it is, maybe there's going to be an option that says, hey, let's take 10% of your revenue coming in and let's put that in Bitcoin. And why are we doing that? It's because we know that you have bills to pay in fiat, but we also know that if you even just hodl 10% of that, even starting in March, you would have doubled your position there. And so I think we can look at the ecosystem alone, but we already are seeing these same companies building to extend their services to offer to other enterprises. And so I think that's when you start to see major moves coming. And so like you look at whoever's powering, I forget who's powering PayPal, but someone is, and that wasn't PayPal who did it. And that's going to help people moving. Yeah. Paxos,
I think we can all agree CK was beating his chest very hard, and that's okay,
I didn't mean to disparage you or OpenNode. I
have no
was
feelings.
more disparaging merchants that would accept Bitcoin and just to get fiat. Like that's a marketing gimmick.
We saw that with
that doesn't move the
plan.
needle.
Yeah, that's the Roger school of thought. Is go there, make them accept Bitcoin. Maybe they get one or two customers coming through, which isn't enough value for them to justify the extra accounting overhead that's very real, tax overhead, just the operational overhead that comes with accepting it is not enough for that maybe small group of people that want to spend it. And so that's why we need to equally build the incentives to use it, but the incentives to hold it too. So that's why I think it all begins with store value and merchants really valuing it.
Well, yes, no. Look, we've been doing this for I think 8 years now. We're accepting Bitcoin, and it is, we're playing the long game, and a lot of merchants do come in. Look, we want to accept Bitcoin because it is another, as I mentioned earlier, another market share that we want to have in our tool belt. But the other part of that is that sooner or later it's going to pay dividends. And for us in the travel business, our business is dead, pretty much. Coronavirus is, really knocked it on its head. The exception to that is our crypto and Bitcoin payments. And we just did a press release in the last week. You know, we're at 70% of our online transactions in September, 70 something percent were on using Bitcoin or cryptocurrency. 90% of our online transactions in October were that. So look,
Wow.
it's huge. And you know what? And November's tracking amazing. And Lightning's kicking in. Lightning's, you know, it's a small percentage, but it's, you know, it's starting to show. So, you know, we'll call it the savior or whatever you want to call it, but saving our ass online is crypto right now.
Wow.
Because, well, particularly this has to do with regulatory issues of countries actually shutting down, you know, banks shutting down, saying, hey, we need to keep the money inside our country. You're overseas, there's so much fraud going on because everybody's locked up at home now. The credit cards are being shut down. We got, you know, all sorts of things. You know what's borderless? Bitcoin. Okay, crypto is border. There is, and you know, CK, this kind of comes back to what your question about this cross-border thing. It works, and you know, maybe the mom and pop merchants down the street, yeah, you know, they're accepting, you know, crypto here. What for? Because they want to be able to go across the border with it at some point. They wanted that easy translation. So people do get into crypto because they need the fiat. We're one of those people. You pay us $10,000 for an airline ticket, 9,980 of it, we make about 20 bucks a ticket, has to go to an airline, and there are no airlines that actually accept Bitcoin for payment, major ones will say. Okay, so we do need to have that fiat thing in there, and this is where people like Albert and these merchant platforms, yeah, they're in there. You know, I'm in the game because I actually have to be able to translate the crypto back into a fiat currency, and there are platforms that work. You know, we use Tinkle out of out of Italy, Bitcoin Pay in Vietnam, Neutron Pay. So there's these different platforms. I agree with Joe. You know, that merchants, if they're smart, I'm not really very smart, but if they can, if the platform is good, there should be a little flick of switch or something in there to be able to say, hey, look, hodl 1 or 2%. You know, Joe, I'm absolutely kicking myself that I didn't adjust the switch earlier, because, you know, back when Bitcoin was at 4,000 earlier this year, I would have quadrupled my money if I would have hodled just a little bit more.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's funny. Just to kind of touch on that with Dave stuff is we see a lot of the merchants that are accepting now through here in Vietnam. And so, you know how most of them that we said that, you know, we'd have to convert it to fiat, but we do have an option for them to hold it into crypto. And it's funny, we would say probably about close to 90% of the merchants regret converting it into fiat. And so it's kind of, you know, it's kind of like what comes first, right? Obviously, we want them to have that kind of education and kind of understand that, you know, Bitcoin should be a store of value. You should hold it. Its value there. You shouldn't sell it. But I think a lot of that is just due to education, right? A lot of people just more or less for the business side, when we see a lot of merchants come on, they just see it as a form of, can I move my inventory? Is it a new customer that's coming in? That's all I really care about. I think the fact of them saying that we want to hold it later for store of value comes later when they start seeing, you know, obviously like the price today. So there's a lot of requests today of saying on our platform that they don't want to sell it now that they've seen it at 16,000 and a half. So now these merchants have now changed that mindset. But I think that's what helps, right? Is as long as you can get them on board, you give them those options, and you say, if you do want to convert to fiat, it's there. And usually when we saw it, I say earlier into this year, 90% of them wanted to convert it into fiat. As the kind of year progressed, you can see a lot of them tailing off and saying, I don't want to convert to fiat anymore. I'll just leave it in Bitcoin. So now it's kind of half VND and now half BTC. And now what we see now towards the end of the year is now that it's pretty close to 90% that they just want to save and they don't even want to convert it at all. So
it's very easy to forget how cumbersome online payments can be in the non-euro, non-US dollar world. And Bitcoin, it's even if it's sometimes more of a marketing gimmick, it is very nice to be able to point to an option that says, hey, sorry, we had to reject your credit card payment because of our fraud detection systems. We would still very much like welcome you as a customer. Here's Bitcoin. And I do think more people than we think run into those situations where they don't want to pay with Bitcoin, but they want to make the purchase, and it just works. It works across borders. It works even if you're behind an anonymity network, or if you're in a country like Nigeria is over 100 million people, and they categorically get rejected from pretty much any service. Like a company in Hong Kong that I consult for is like digital services, and they categorically reject Nigerian IPs from their credit card system. So then, if you navigate to the site, the only payment option that will show up is Bitcoin.
I think there's another strong merchant narrative that I actually haven't seen at all, which is chargebacks, which is a huge problem for online merchants, especially the larger ones. And so to be able to offer something that, sure, you can convert to fiat immediately, or you could hold in Bitcoin or hold some percent, but then drop your chargebacks to 0% of your transactions, I think that could save companies probably billions of dollars per year. I don't know enough about the space. I don't know if any of you guys do.
This is a massive issue for retailers. There's no, when I see a payment come through, I hope it's Bitcoin. I hope that it's coming through as Bitcoin, because that I don't have to sweat it. I don't have to think. I don't have to second guess it. And not only that, is that the chargeback window, 30 to 90 days here, is something that gets to go over your head. So every time you get to see, maybe you're breaking some record you have in terms of daily volume, I'm in the back of your head, you're thinking how much of that is fraud, and you don't know for a long time. And so for me, I could not be happier to accept Bitcoin as a means of exchange and the means of payment, because it has real effects on both my own sanity, but also just on our operations.
It's the go to sleep at night solution.
So it's quite astonishing how much money gets lost in fraud and in credit card fees. But it's also quite astonishing how much money gets made by people not canceling their recurring subscriptions. And that's actually quite a reason why a few companies that I've talked to do not want to push people to Bitcoin payments, because the fraud risk for them is much lower than the chance of that person, just becoming like a monthly, like a long-term customer. And in Bitcoin, I think the UI could be a lot easier in Bitcoin to make recurring payments, or to just nudge people to renew their subscription. But not enough thought has gone into this. And as a consumer, of course, that as a consumer, I have the opposite problems, right? I might prefer paying with a credit card because I'm able to charge that back, but I might also not want to pay with a credit card because I can actually lose more than I put in.
Yeah, it's actually kind of funny. I was talking to Will yesterday about the benefits of like the equity economy versus the debt economy. But before getting into that, I kind of want to jump into like when it comes to valuing Bitcoin and seeing growth in Bitcoin. It really blew my mind when David said that, when Rona hit, travel, took a huge hit, but what actually stayed alive was the crypto side of his business. And I co-host a show with Ansel Lindner, and he's an economist, and he talks about, he sees the way that Bitcoin grows is because the legacy system kind of stagnates and deflates because of mismanagement of capital and capital constraints and KYC and all this stuff. And growth happens in Bitcoin. Growth happens in crypto, in the free system, the permissionless system, the system that allows people to compete. And it was just really kind of mind blowing to see, growth is happening for David in crypto, in the travel space. And it kind of makes me think like, we see Cash App and Square, all of their growth is happening in Bitcoin. And now we see PayPal today fully get into the game. And, really it's because they FOMO'd after seeing Square's bottom line because of their ability to monetize Cash App. Finally, PayPal has Venmo, but they haven't been able to make, very much on it compared to what Cash App is doing with Bitcoin. I want to jump to Brad. eToro was one of the very first companies that went from legacy to like, hey, we can make a lot of money if we start supporting Bitcoin and crypto. And then now your US operations is just crypto. I kind of want to think about like, where is growth coming from crypto and maybe what is eToro thinking?
Yeah, that's a great question. So like you said, right now we're crypto only in the US, but next year we'll be introducing equities. So that's really exciting, but globally we're up to quite a bit. So globally we have a full-on order book exchange. We have various stable coins in a number of different currencies, as well as tokenized versions of gold, silver, and I think maybe a couple others. So that's just some of the stuff we're working on right now. Obviously, there's things that I can't really talk about yet, but the future is bright, right? Like you said, we were one of the early adopters from the traditional into crypto, bring crypto to consumers, and that trend's only going to continue. I think that in the US right now, what we've seen emerged over the last year or so, I guess, is that crypto is now sort of a Me Too product. So first it was interest-bearing accounts with a lot of fintechs like these neobanks or challenger banks. And now what we have coming next is crypto. And you said it perfectly. Cash App was sort of the MVP to prove to everybody how valuable this can be for them. Now SoFi is doing it. And you just hear rumors all the time of these other huge fintechs looking into it right now. So you have all these liquidity providers that might have this exciting boom season over the next 2 years, where these traditional fintechs, they don't necessarily want to have their own order books or run their own liquidity. So they're going to look for these partners to help them operate it. So I think that from that perspective, the next couple of years could be really, really exciting from a consumer standpoint.
So how about Bitcoin as like a source of growth or energy? Like who else has ideas or thoughts there? Maybe we can just jump to you, Will, because we did talk about, Fold enables you to get crazy cash back just because you're putting your money first rather than using a credit card or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's always been an interesting pitch. We talk a lot about a merchant adoption and how that happens. And normally the pitch is, well, hey, there's a lot of people with Bitcoin, accept Bitcoin as a payment, and you're going to get a bunch of new customers. And to some extent, David has incredible data to back that up. But when we start to talk to the larger merchants that we're working with, that doesn't quite get there. They saw the Expedias, they saw the Microsofts, and a couple others who accepted it and then stopped accepting it because of what they said was a lack of participation or involvement. So when we talk to them, we really flip it on its head. We say, well, we know that there is a ton of people that want Bitcoin, and we can connect you with them. And so if you can offer Bitcoin rewards and work with us as a means to do that, we're going to change and bring a whole new customer segments to you. And we have incredible data to say, if you are someone who uses Lyft as your rideshare, we have people leaving Lyft even to go to Uber or vice versa or other. It's an extremely powerful tool to change loyalty and to change behaviors. And so they're seeing that. This is a lot of my job, is talking to a lot of merchants who maybe a year ago had no interest in doing this. And now just from seeing the data, see how that they can very easily in a very low risk way start to kind of take a whole new customer segments. And then it obviously helps that Square and other larger leading incumbents are making Bitcoin more part of the mainstream. And it's making my pitches certainly easier. What they said about half of millennials are planning on buying Bitcoin in the next 5 years. There's just, we are really seeing the beginning of a new adoption wave that I think is going to put even the prior ones to absolute shame. Number one, because the on-ramps are much larger, but the diversity of players. We always used to talk about mainstream adoption. We talked about the institutions are coming. Now we're talking about corporate reserve treasuries. And we are the amount of people that can participate in the capital they represent is far larger than what we saw in the 2017 cycle. And so I think all of people on this call are all opening and chiseling away, opening up these new channels there. And I think it will show in the next wave where the upper bound is going to be much higher than maybe we previously thought.
So I kind of want to flip this conversation over. We're talking about Bitcoin adoption worldwide. We're talking about the Bitcoin narratives. A very prominent narrative that has emerged through 2017 is Bitcoin only, Bitcoin maximalism. Ignore the other stuff. I'm curious, like, we have a very diverse panel here, people that are operating a variety of different businesses that, either are Bitcoin only or do offer kind of other alternatives. What is the landscape of Bitcoin maximalism worldwide? What are the adoption of like the Bitcoiner narratives or memes? I'm kind of curious to start with someone from Asia. I'm kind of curious from you, Albert. Oh yeah, go for it.
Me and CK were jamming earlier, and we were talking about topics, and this is one that we both kind of came to. I'm super fascinated about this because I'm curious if you're familiar with it, if you're overseas, maximalism, is it a global phenomenon? Is there a community of maximalists in Vietnam, for example, that, hold kind of those, I don't think that they're necessarily American ideals, they're Bitcoiner ideals, but I'm biased again. I'm in friggin' Arkansas, right? I don't have a worldview. So I'm curious, is there global maximalist communities out there? And also, second thing would be, it would be great if Twitter had auto translate, because we'd love to be able to connect with those other maximalists. That would be a killer feature.
Just since you mentioned Vietnam, look, there are maximalists here. We have a Bitcoin meetup, and I would say more than half the people that show up there are maximalists. Others have diverse portfolios and looking at other things. We as a merchant accept 5 different cryptocurrencies. And they basically, with the exception of Bitcoin, have no traction, period. We've spent the money, we've invested, we've got everything set up, but nobody's using Ethereum to buy. Nobody's using Bitcoin Cash. Nobody's using Litecoin. It's all coming back to Bitcoin. So I think as a merchant, and look, we've been around pretty long, and people know about us, and they buy, and we advertise across all different kinds of channels. It's not like we're maximalists and saying we're only going to advertise for Bitcoin, for sales. We go to all those different channels to advertise, that we do merchant acceptance, and it's just not happening. Okay, so anything you read about how other currencies are making inroads into the merchant acceptance, and ultimately is that converting to sales? No, for us, and look, I'm happy if we're doing something wrong, you tell me, because we want to do more sales. That's sort of like I always say, we're here to make money. I'm not here to get my hair cut. I'm here to make some money.
It's kind of funny. I've met a couple of people that we go into meetups or some functions that I've gone to, and this will kind of maybe be a little funny, is that so there was a big Bitcoin Cash community here, and they were trying to do the whole thing too with retail and trying to push it, and they had this narrative of this thing's going to be super quick, everyone's going to start accepting it. And it's funny, ever since I've been here, I don't know if like maybe Dave you can do these numbers too, but I've only been here for a year, but the people that I meet now are converters from Bcash to now Bitcoin. Have said, I don't know what I was doing before. I have no idea why I went down this Bcash rabbit hole, and there was nothing there. There's no liquidity. There's no one using it. There's no technology there. There's nothing for me to actually grab and hold on to understand that why would I want to keep using this or holding it for some reason. So now those people have actually converted over just to Bitcoin, and now have more interest in actually learning what the next layer of Bitcoin is, which is Bitcoin Lightning. And so then that has got them a lot more excited, because now they see that there's value, and there's also a medium of exchange for them to actually transact at a certain small level, right? So they don't have to transact at a large level.
Albert, let me take it maybe a step further. When I say maximalist, I mean a little bit more toxicity, a little bit more like Austrian economics. I don't know if that's a thing. And perhaps I should.
If you
say
ever listen to
American
Bitcoin in
maximalist.
Asia, if you ever listen to Bitcoin in Asia, there's a lot of deep understanding of Austrian economics. And I don't know if it's because of understanding gold or understanding of Bitcoin, or that because of Bitcoin, but it's there, man. Yeah.
No, it's
Albert.
here. Yeah. CK is like, you're spot on it, because the way we have it here is the culture here doesn't rely on a lot of credit, right? So a lot of people just spend on what they have. And so a lot of people are savers. A lot of people don't overspend on what they need, accounting for the other people that are like kind of well off. But most of the population here uses only what they have. And a lot of them have the mindset of just saving. And so kind of coming back into being kind of this Bitcoin maximalist, subjectively, I am like, I will shill the hell out of Bitcoin. I'm just right on it. But from my business side, from an objective side, I have to be able to be kind of on the balance, right? I have to be able to kind of not share that crazy side, which I call, I think is normal, but people call it very, very crazy. But that's just the world I live in. And so I have to be very objective to other people that are not into it yet. But the people that do get into it eventually start going down the rabbit hole and start saying, yes, why would there be anything else? Like Bitcoin is what they see. They kind of understand it from their kind of own economics of how they've done with kind of cash their entire life, where they said, I've had no credit. The only thing I've ever really done with my life is save as much as I could and only spend where I need to, live within my means, and I don't need to overspend on anything. So the whole Bitcoin narrative works for them perfectly. It kind of gravitates to them. So there's more people willing to go into this maximalist narrative, I guess you would say, and kind of support it, because it kind of just sits within their lifestyle, right? They've used to it, they're accustomed to it. They feel that this is the most thing that kind of relates to them now, especially from a new technology side, right? Because before it's just cash. How much cash can I stuff under my mattress? How much can I save without losing through inflation, right? And a lot of people still are kind of being educated on that, where they're saying, okay, now I understand, like, even if I hold my cash, I'm still losing money. So how do I save it? And so when we step in and say, you can use it with, put that cash to use, you buy some Bitcoin, just hold it out. Doesn't have to be a whole lot. Don't put your whole life savings into it. Maybe just put like 10%, 10, 15%, whatever you feel comfortable. And now that has kind of started converting a lot of the people that we've kind of met, and a lot of the merchants that we've kind of put on board too as well.
I think there's some practical reasons for maximalism, though. I think a big one is focus, and another big one is narrative. Like for us, we're building a hardware wallet. I mean, I can't even imagine how it must be just so difficult to maintain support for like 100 different cryptocurrencies. I think most of like what Ledger's team is doing is just maintaining support and adding new cryptocurrencies, and then you miss out on a lot of those new and exciting features in Bitcoin. And so when I look at the exchange landscape, for example, and I look at like what River is doing, that's completely focused on Bitcoin, they have their backend infrastructure is all PSBT based. They've had Lightning since the beginning. They're able to do things a lot faster than other exchanges. Then from a narrative perspective, I think, as we get into more of a bull market in the next several months, hopefully, there's going to be a lot of new people coming in, and most of them will have no idea, what's Bitcoin Cash, what are these other cryptocurrencies. And I think we have a responsibility as an industry to, educate those people and just send them into Bitcoin, right? And so when you're going on, like Cash App, for example, your only option is Bitcoin. But if you're going onto Coinbase, then you see all these other different cryptocurrencies, and you don't really know where you're supposed to be putting your money. So I think maximalism, while yes, it can get kind of toxic, I think it can be very practical as well for a company.
There are definitely people who fit the definition of like the very sober, neutral definition of a maximalist in Hong Kong and also around other places in Asia, including in the local communities. It's not really not limited to to foreign-born people, but this phenomenon that like you called it toxic, or this phenomenon that maximalists have to be very shrill and have to be loud and have to like somewhat like Twitter influencers and have to speak at conferences. That phenomenon doesn't exist at all. And that phenomenon is also seen as a bit weird. I think the toxic maximalist phenomenon is pretty great. I think it's more of a clever way of playing chicken. It's a bit the equivalent of this idea of an intolerant minority being able to change things against this vast herd of people and users that don't really care. I think is in practical terms also quite a powerful one. Like I compare it with a small group of people who one day decide they want to change the direction of the road. They believe that America should drive on the left side, and so they fill up like little shopping carts with stones, and they just like scream and yell and like and then move on the wrong side of the highway. And I go, well, why do all these trucks care, right? You have these massive SUVs and these big trucks, and they're all gonna swerve out of the way, right? Because clearly these people are insane. clearly, you don't care what side of the road you're going. So maybe the next time you go on the highway, you take the other turn. But the way I talk to people in Hong Kong who then I think fit the definition of maximalists are they're more like, you could more call them like Bitcoin only users. They're more people who say, well, I like Bitcoin for these properties, and if you ask them, do you accept Bitcoin Cash or do you accept Ethereum, they're just gonna say no. That's very much driven by their experiences, but also by their you mentioned that if they know about Austrian economics, and it's probably also very much influences their decision to only accept and only use Bitcoin, or only even just spend their day about Bitcoin. And that might be influenced. I think technical people tend to be a lot more of these like Bitcoin only people. But if I look at my Hong Kong friends who fit that definition, then they're definitely not loud about it. They're definitely not like evangelical about it, and they're just gonna quietly say like, I only have a Bitcoin wallet, and this wallet is crap because it doesn't focus on Bitcoin, and I'm only gonna take Bitcoin, and if you want to give me something else, then run it through Shapeshift first.
I have to defend the toxicity though, because I know I just kind of criticized it almost. But if you go back to like 2016, I think Bitcoin was in a pretty fragile place with the different forks, with Bitcoin Cash and the threat of SegWit 2x. And if it wasn't for that toxic maximalism, with our UASF hats and for the user activated soft fork and all that kind of stuff, I mean, it's possible that Bitcoin could have fragmented into different pieces. And so I don't think it's like the people in the shopping carts or whatever on the road. I do think there's definitely a place for it, and sometimes you don't realize that until you hit some kind of key challenge, and then all the toxic maximalists come out and keep us on the right path.
I have to say that while a lot of people like to chest pump on toxic maximalism, I do like how Michael Saylor framed it, which is maybe a little bit more of a euphemism, but cyber hornets protecting the network. We always need to improve our messaging. So while toxic maximalism sounds, hard and badass, I definitely think that there's benefits from more inclusive language while still achieving the same thing. Zach talked about benefits of kind of going Bitcoin only. I want to hear about what Fold is thinking about benefits from going Bitcoin only, and then I want to jump over to Brad, because obviously eToro is not Bitcoin only, and I'm kind of curious to hear what is driving interest in eToro. But let's start with Will.
Yeah, I mean, if you start back from the founding principles of Fold, it was to forward the adoption of Bitcoin. We're ideologically aligned. We have some people on our team who may not, but Bitcoin is now a household name, whether you like it or not. That is what they understand. And so for us as a team, that's the challenge that we were working on. And then you go to the business level, focusing on Bitcoin streamlines our focus. It makes us far more efficient, effective. We can run way faster than a competitor who has a bunch of coins set up. Our attack vectors are much lower. We can adopt new technology faster. It is something that, for a team of, I'm a team of 7, we're a team of 7. We would never have gone any other way. And then, with our specific problem to solve is adoption, mainstream adoption. Bitcoin is the obvious choice. It has Lindy for it is, best performing asset of the last decade. It has all the earmarks of entering into a new household. Bitcoin is what is going to be desired and understood first before all the others. And then, looking at where we want to be and what we're trying to do here. I think there's a lot of great experiments, and I think maximalism often does maybe look at some of these experiments and looks at them as direct threats against Bitcoin, and because they were, to Zach's point earlier. Like Bitcoin was in a very fragile state, and I think we have yet to see a true negative consequence of this toxic maximalism. I don't think we've seen a bad thing to come out of it. Yes, it provides some heated arguments and things like that, but at the end of the day, other projects are doing what they're doing. Bitcoin is only increasing its share and its dominance from that perspective. And so I think from across the board, as an individual, as a company, and what we would like to see from the world, I mean, Bitcoin is currently the only asset that hits all three of those, and from my perspective.
Yeah, look, and I'll support you on that as well, Will. That probably as you start looking at how companies go about being more involved, at the development level and everywhere else. So we, at Future, we have affiliates, people who help us sell our product. We pay them with Bitcoin. Everything's paid out, the reward system. Some of our programmers are paid, in Bitcoin. And certainly, Bitcoin VN, which is the one of the major exchanges here, 50% of all of their payments are not in fiat. It's all being done with Bitcoin. So I think probably businesses, circular economy, everything coming in, it's just moving more and more towards a Bitcoin type payment system. For us, Lightning solved a problem. It's kind of hard. It's very hard for us to pay an affiliate. Let's say an affiliate makes $4. Okay, this is a month. They have a month, but we pay every single month. We guarantee we're going to pay. You know what? We lost a lot of money when we're paying $4 commissions out, and it cost us $12 to get the money there. Thank God for Lightning. And
can't believe you guys did that.
No, you know what? Hey, because if you don't, you lose your credibility in the marketplace, and we're honest. And that's the difference between scammers and reality. And 2016, 2017, lots of people jumped on, and then they lost. The price of the coin went down, so suddenly we became a scam. Whole government said that Bitcoin's a scam, and us merchants who are still here, we're the ones that are honest, and we took the loss, and you know what? Today I'm getting paid back because our sales are going up, and like I said, 70% of our online sales in September.
I do want to jump to Brad. Brad, give us the cold hard truth. What's driving growth for eToro? Is it Bitcoin? Is it something else? I just this is Bitcoin Magazine, but I want to know what you're seeing.
Yeah, I mean, Bitcoin is one of our most widely traded assets across the world. We're in well over 100 countries. So that's, a statement in and of itself. But I'd also like to
that may settle it.
Oh man,
Brad.
The internet is censoring him.
Yeah,
Got censored.
We'll come back to him.
So hey, look, just with something Will said earlier about chargebacks, as a merchant, using Bitcoin is, my staff love it. We can turn around a ticket order in less than 1 minute if it is a Bitcoin payment. If it is coming through like a credit card,
Hey,
Visa,
Brad's
MasterCard.
backed. Hey,
Okay,
but
anyway, takes us forever.
David, I'm sorry. That's amazing though, and it's awesome to hear that it's going from Bitcoin is a pain to Bitcoin is better, and maybe just being blinded by the U.S. Brad, we lost you pretty much the entire way. So if you wanna start from Bitcoin is working, but yeah, you can go from there.
Sure. So Bitcoin is one of our most widely traded assets on the platform, and that's globally, which is really exciting. So it shows you just the consumer interest and even traditional investor interest in it. But I think it's also worth saying that the average person who's coming in and investing in crypto for the first or second time right now, they're not necessarily doing it for ideological reasons. They're doing it as an alternative asset. Maybe some of them are buying into the narrative of a hedge against inflation, something like that. So for a lot of these people, it's just as a way that they can speculate on future value. I think that us on crypto Twitter and whatever other communities like to think that we're this huge space, but really in the scheme of things, we're still quite small. So I think that when we're talking about maximalism and the way that we talk about things, maximalism in and of itself is not necessarily a bad thing. But I think that, and someone was saying this before, that making it a little bit more inclusive is something that we should strive for. And I think that the last 4 years or so, just most of the projects that are coming out now have been striving to make onboarding easier, whether that's from a knowledge perspective or a user experience perspective. So you have companies like Fold or Lolly or even BlockFi making products that are approachable for the average person at minimum, right? Like I think that's, for a lot of people, the leap is making things user friendly. So I know that this is a little bit off topic from where we were before, but I think that the driver partly is making things more approachable, but also people are buying into some of these wider narratives that have been out there for a while, and then it's our job to bring them in and bring them down the rabbit hole.
I think that's very fair. Guys, we're pushing up against 2 hours. I'm on the East Coast. A bunch of others are on the East Coast. And while some here are just starting their day, I think it's kind of getting to that point where it's time for last words. This was a fantastic conversation, very wide ranging. Before we get into last words, we did have a question in the chat. Someone was asking about the Fold card and if it's available in all 50 states. Will, do you want to answer that? And then maybe you can give your last word and we can jump off from there.
Yeah, I am very happy to say that the Fold card will be available in all 50 states, including New York and all of the others that are under some sort of, bit license regime. But the team worked pretty hard to make that happen. And yeah, it's coming everywhere. And then hopefully, of course, roll out to Canada, EU, Hong Kong as fast as possible, and wherever else you all are. So yeah, we're trying to make it available to all the Bitcoiners in the U.S. first, and then we'll expand out. Last words. Well, thank you everyone on this. It's always incredible to see Bitcoiners building in all different parts of the world and all have a completely different perspective to bring to it. I think use all of these products that are coming out. That's, I think, the key to the success for Fold is the community letting us know what to build. That helps us guide. So get on the wait list for the Fold card. We're giving away 1 Bitcoin with Bitcoin Magazine. It's kind of crazy. I still can't believe we're doing that, but I'm hoping it's going to be up to 20K. So get on that list, refer people. But other than that, thanks Bitcoin Magazine for being, again, a bastion of truth and sanity amongst this very wild world that we're all working in.
Thank you for the kind words. Let's jump over to you, David. David, thank you for being on the show. You brought a wealth of knowledge and experience and very cool insights from a very kind of different business model. So I guess why don't you give your last word and plug where people can find and learn more about you?
Well, first of all, we're future.travel. Pretty easy to find. There's no .com, it's just future.travel if you're looking for us. Pretty much my last word is a word that I had probably 4 or 5 years ago is you don't have to buy a Bitcoin. You can buy sats, okay? And the last word is, if you have a chance, get a Lightning ATM. You can build it yourself, or maybe you can purchase one, but put it out on the street for everybody on your street to be able to walk down and buy 10 cents, 50 cents worth of Satoshis, which is the smallest part of the Bitcoin, and get in the game. It's, get the kids to start hodling. And the last word is stack the stats. That's it.
Let's go. Always stack sats. Love that. Let's jump over to Zach. Zach, I'm excited to dive into Passport. We're going to be covering that a lot more on Bitcoin Magazine. What are your last words? And thank you for joining this call.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, guys. My last words, I think, is that 2021 is going to be the year of multi-sig. And I think every Bitcoiner should set a goal for him or herself to move your coins over to multi-sig by the end of the year. There's a lot of great options now, and there's going to be even more options. And we're really excited to be introducing our Passport Bitcoin hardware wallet to the world, hopefully shipping in January. We have pre-orders on our website now, foundationdevices.com. And you're going to be hearing a lot more from us about how Passport works, videos, some early previews with Bitcoin Magazine and others, and some podcasts later this year. And yeah, we're just really excited to make it easier for people to store their own Bitcoin. But yeah, thanks for having me.
Awesome. Let's go over to Leo. Leo, thanks again for joining. Thanks for jumping on early in the morning. What are your last words, sir?
I think the circular economy is incredibly important to push Bitcoin forward. Eventually, accepting Bitcoin will have to be an anonymous way of getting Bitcoin, and spending Bitcoin will have to be an anonymous way of getting rid of Bitcoin. And that's going to be incredibly important to just fungibility. So I'm looking for more options on how to spend my Bitcoin and accept Bitcoin. And so please do pay with Bitcoin when you see a store that has it. And please let me pay in Bitcoin if you do run a store. And then we'll get Bitcoin to at least the moon.
Let's go. I love that. Check out bitcoinblackfriday.com. Again, tons of great deals. Merchants want to earn your Bitcoin, really. I think it's about valuing Bitcoins, and I think merchants are valuing them, and they want to give you discounts for your Bitcoins. Let's go to Brad, and then let's close it out with Albert. Brad, what's your last words?
My last words are 2021 is going to be a big year for us. Bitcoin isn't a company. It doesn't have a marketing department. We're all marketers for Bitcoin. So think about how you want to represent Bitcoin to your friends. If you're the kind of person to encourage your friends to stack sats, think about how you might convince one or two of them of doing that. Bring them into the ecosystem, and yeah, keep stacking yourself.
All right, Albert, you, sir.
Yeah, I just want to say thanks first for having me on. Thanks to Bitcoin Magazine and for you guys for letting me be here. Yeah, so my final words is I think if you can't buy Bitcoin, earn it. And I think I'm a big proponent person of, store of value for Bitcoin, but I'm also now even a bigger kind of proponent for pushing for a circular economy. So I want people to have outlets, right? So I want us to be more available for people to spend the Bitcoin. I know that's probably not the narrative that should be sent right now, but in Vietnam, it's a huge way for people to kind of get into the system. And I think that's the easiest way that people can earn it and kind of understand it, and then learn to how to actually store it and keep it as value. So that's why we've kind of pushed that, at Neutron Pay to try to push this here so that people can easily start up a website within a few minutes, whether it be WooCommerce, Shopify, and we have all those plugins to kind of for them to set it up in. And if they can't buy it, they can easily earn it. There's a bunch of products here that they can easily sell, either it be food or materials or whatever it is. And so that's kind of our big kind of push. And so hopefully having a big impact here in Vietnam will hopefully kind of move that out into the other regions in Southeast Asia. And hopefully we kind of meet in the middle with the West and the US coming together, and also with Europe and the UK.
Awesome. Bitcoin bringing the world together. You guys, I don't know how I forgot Joe, but Joe, I'm going to let you close it out. And since you're one of the hosts, make sure to plug the show and all that good stuff.
All right. Well, hey, guys, everyone out there that's watching, please give us a like, follow, ring the bell, all that kind of good stuff. Check out Bitcoin Black Friday. A lot of fun stuff coming. But I guess my final parting words, thanks everyone for joining. I think it's super interesting to get a worldwide perspective. But also, I mean, just like as we're coming into this next kind of bull market, there's going to be a lot of questions. And if you're out there watching, the only way to learn is to raise your hand and engage, and community's out there and you can find it. So I know that you'll probably lurk for a while, but do your own research, read as much as you can, and just read and stack and be patient, and, raise your hand. I've got a feeling, I got a hunch that every guy that's on the stream right now will reply to a DM, and just slide into the threads on Twitter and, ask your questions, because you will find community. So thanks everyone for joining. This has been a great banger, episode 1, and here's to many more. Thanks CK for putting it together.
Yeah, cheers to everyone else. And yeah, Tommy in the studio. Let's close this one out.
Thanks y'all.